Hello and welcome to the Squeaky Bum Time Podcast with Mike and Laurent. It is Tuesday, August 24th. In this episode, Arsenal thumped by Chelsea. United and Liverpool complain about getting bullied. And West Ham are top of the league. But can they stay there? Is Moyes the greatest manager never to win a trophy, Pochettino? But first, Mike, drama in Serie A. Tell us what's happening with your namesake team.
Oh my goodness, crazy scenes in Salerno, Italy. US Salernitana, 1919's first game in Serie A ever, I'm pretty sure. They played Bologna. They traveled. Now, I was at a hotel. I couldn't watch the game. I was tracking it nervously on my phone. They go down a man before halftime.
Wait, Mike, one second, though.
Yeah.
Who is this team and why is it important to you?
That's
we talk about the Premier League most of the time.
Let's start that.
But what is going on with Salernitana?
So Salernitana 1919 is literally a team from Salerno, Italy, who went from the fourth division.
That's your name.
That's my name. The fourth division in Italy, Serie D or to Serie A, the top division. They were promoted last year. They went up 4 divisions in roughly a decade, which is unheard of. Crazy. And like I said, they're money. What's that?
Is it mob money?
No, and I'll tell you how I know that. They're so poor. They're so poorly run that they don't even have an online store. So if it's shocking to me that they've gotten this far. It actually isn't really. If I take a step back and go, if I'm related to any of these people, that makes a ton of sense that they don't even know how to monetize this shit.
Yeah, because we're growing this podcast really fast.
We're killing it. So this is my second team that I've adopted. I follow them religiously, and this is the second game I got to watch them.
Since June.
Yeah, since they got promoted.
Yeah,
I was super excited. I'm in. I'm all the way in.
That's great.
They won their first Coppa Italia game 2-0. But they started their Serie A campaign over the weekend, and they were going to Bologna, as I mentioned. Now I'll spoil it right off the jump. This game had 3 red cards and 5 goals. It was fucking crazy, right? So the Garnets, as they're known, went down a man right before halftime. They score, and then the other team, Bologna, goes down a man. So they're up 1-0, and they're even 10 men apiece. They give up a goal. They score again. They give up an equalizer to our friend, Marko Arnautovic. I saw that he was playing for Bologna, and I was like, oh, fuck, this is bad. He was the only player on either team that I recognized, by the way.
Fucking legend.
He's a legend. So when I saw that he was on for Bologna and that Salernitana was down a man, I was like, I would race to try and put a bet in on him to score, but I couldn't.
Marko Arnautovic, of course, legendarily, because he's the reincarnation of Primo Princip, who shot Archduke Ferdinand.
There you go. We'll get
He's like a Serbian nationalist who kill to start World War I. Anytime.
That's right. We'll get the war reference out of the week early this week. I like it. So they go down 3-2 late in the game. Bologna takes another red card. Now, shockingly, neither of these were Marko Arnautovic. And
what was he doing? I'm disappointed.
I know. He didn't even I don't think he got booked at all in a game that was pretty chippy. They had a couple of opportunities. They couldn't make anything of it. So they lost to a 9-man Bologna team, 3-2.
And that's no baloney.
Hey, so that's how they started their Serie A campaign. I'm sad, but I have been training for this for years, almost a decade as a Tottenham supporter. Right. I am prepared to get hurt again. And I'm going to, it sounds like they are their first home game this coming weekend against Roma, who is managed by none other than Jose Mourinho. So no matter who you are rooting for Salernitana next weekend because Mourinho is
go. What did you say? You said go on, you Salernos.
Come on, you Salernos. Garnets is their nickname. So come on, you Garnets.
They do. I showed my wife the logo. It has a fucking go faster goddamn seahorse on it. It looks incredible. The fact that I don't have it up makes me sad. Speaking of things that are merch, go buy the Nuno knows shirt. He still knows.
That's right.
It's on chopsports.com. Where you can find our one piece of merch and our logo.
We've got 3. We've got the logo on a couple of other shirts too.
Okay.
So there's a couple.
So Nuno knows is living.
And Nuno knows is the main piece of merch that we've got so far. So go check it out.
But narrative. This week we've got to sort of set the stage. We have Arsenal playing Chelsea. We have Lukaku, and we have narrative. And what we saw from Arsenal was poor. I had a vested interest in this game as I had Arsenal plus 350 to win at home based on a working, functional Arsenal that has Aubameyang and has Lacazette and has players that aren't 20 years old and wet behind the ears.
And when we talked about it on Thursday, we thought that Martin Odegaard would be in that lineup. It turns out that he had visa issues. He was not able to get into the country, much less the stadium.
Because of Brexit. So Arsenal lost because of Brexit. Basically.
Yep, exactly.
That's our narrative. Arsenal lose because of Brexit. That actually would have been a much better narrative. Now, Arsenal came out strong the first 15 minutes. They looked like they were there to play-ish. They had a good, strong pressing. It went decently. But then it just really collapsed once the goal went in. Reece James, and you'll hear about Reece James coming down the wing over and over and over again because that happened the whole game.
Yep.
And it was a give and go. Sorry, not a give and go, but ball into Lukaku. He knocks over Mari, takes off on him, rushes him off, and gets in front of the goal, scores his first goal. And essentially, Arsenal die. They lose a goal, and they continue to leave Reece James open on the wing. It felt like as you were watching the game that Chelsea had 12 guys, and it seemed that Arsenal could not figure out how to shift across the field to handle the wide wingback play of Reece James. It was laughable. Arsenal were the same again, not really creating anything, and the good things that did happened from Smith Rowe, happened from Tierney, happened from the same places, and the same problems were evident again. Mari and Rob Holding just abused by Lukaku. I mean, I'm not going to make it out like it was really bad, but basically Chelsea were never in trouble. They scored another goal early in the second half, and it really was men against boys. I mean, it was easy, and really sort of it's getting in this weird. I mean, you won't feel this way, but I've been feeling it's kind of sad. Like Arsenal is really in the wilderness. I was thinking about it. They're kind of getting into like they're getting into the Milan area where it's just like, what is going on? This is like they're just gone. They're in the wilderness now, where they set the record for this season on transfers, and they really didn't bring in a game changer. They did we'll spend 25 cents on these players rather than buying a $1 player. So they spent 125 million pounds on transfers and got 5 guys, whereas Chelsea spent $100 million and got Lukaku.
And their net spend was roughly even, by the way, from their loan army and all that.
Right. They have, I mean, listen, in terms of how the clubs are run, Chelsea is laps and bounds and miles ahead of where Arsenal is. Arsenal, we were talking about it earlier, at least in terms of Spurs has Levy. He's the consistency. We may not like everything he's doing, but he is the buck stops with me. I've been at this team for 20 years. Yes, there might be disorder now and again, but I'm running this team. I have a plan. There's no plan at Arsenal. I don't know who runs the team. They've had front office changing. Yeah. Arteta seemed like a beacon of hope 12 months ago at Christmas time when he sort of righted the ship, and now it's already back. They've already they're looking at another loss probably to City. I mean, if Chelsea are going to beat them, City are going to beat them.
So,
it's just kind of this sort of sad, what the fuck is going on at Arsenal kind of place right now.
I don't think we should be all that surprised, right? I mean, you and I saw the Brentford loss coming a mile away. It was a bit surprising to the larger group. But you look at the schedule, they had City and they had Chelsea and then City, right? Nobody was going to be surprised if they had 1 or 3 points after 3 games. The problem is that it's a goose egg right now. Now, obviously, the way that the schedule ebbs and flows, they're going to get a soft spot after the City game. They're going to start to pick up some points, and they're going to right the ship a little bit. And coincidentally, they're going to get healthy. That international break is going to come at the perfect time for them, right? So I'm not overly concerned for Mikel Arteta's job. And the other thing, you're not going to give a man $150 million to spend, and you're going to fire him in a month. So it's not going anywhere. The nature, we talked a lot about it last year. around, crazy overreactions. And frankly, we were guilty of it too. We did a whole
No,
episode
but this
where
is
we were
what we
talking
do.
about Southampton.
This is the meal, Jerry. This is what happens in football. Narratives take over. That's why I said this is the narrative. The narrative for Arsenal is after 6 games, they're going to be lucky to be 2-4.
Sure.
Basically.
No, yeah, but where we are now in the narrative, right? Because it's all doom and gloom because you got smoked by Chelsea and you're about to probably get absolutely shit kicked by City, where everybody's going to be downtrodden and worried about Arsenal and starting to talk about Arteta getting sacked and everything. And it's an overcompensation to a normal reaction to something that was relatively predictable. Right. And so that's kind of where I look at it and I go, there's a lot of pieces here. We waxed poetically about Odegaard last week. He's not here yet. If him and Smith Rowe give City a fight and they lose 2-1 or 1-0 or whatever, they're still going to be.
Yeah, but it's the manner, right? It's the manner. It's like
sure.
The same mistakes, the same defenders getting blown off the ball.
Yes,
it's the sameness. It's the where are we going thing. You can lose heroically. Football has that wonderful piece of narrative, right? So Arsenal's next game,
but only if you are putting some results together around the heroic loss, right?
They have to beat Norwich and Burnley, and I mean
exactly
have to,
right?
Because if they go into that North London derby on
0-5
on September 26, 0-5, and they lose, he's gone,
and they lose to Spurs at that point. Yes, at that point, yeah.
Well, I mean, if he's 0-5, he may get fired before that game.
They won't fire him before the Tottenham match. There's no way, because a win at Tottenham can change your season around, right? And we know that game, that derby, you had a player score a Rabona and get a red card within a half a fucking hour last year.
Yeah.
Right. That game can produce literally anything. So
I mean, they do. It is soft, right? It's Norwich, Burnley, Brighton. They'll lose to Brighton. Sorry. They're better.
Maybe.
Brighton are better. Palace, Villa, Leicester. Yeah, it gets soft after Tottenham, and then they have Liverpool. I mean, not that Leicester's weak, but they should be able to play with Leicester.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? It's not like a mega force like playing. Chelsea and City are just there. There's levels to this, right? Like it's a Richter scale, and City and Chelsea are like 7s on the Richter scale, but Leicester's a 3, and you're like, oh, okay, I can handle that. And right now, Leicester are better. Like there's teams that are better you should never say Leicester are better. I mean, who would you rather be right now? We're gonna talk about West Ham. Would you rather be West Ham than Arsenal right now?
Oh, 100%.
Yes.
Yeah,
they got better players.
So one thing I was reading an article in The Athletic, and I think it's really interesting. I think it's interesting that teams are starting to gravitate towards this, but also it's almost more interesting that so many aren't, and that's set pieces. There's so much more bandwidth and attention being given to set pieces, planning for them, strategizing around them, cheeky like train. Every time, put it this way, every time you see a free kick outside the box and it's played to a player instead of just whipped in for a header, what's the term? Training ground. They just call it training ground play. Like, yeah, everybody should have 4 or 5 of those, right? Like the annexation of Puerto Rico or whatever the fuck Ted Lasso calls it, right? So,
but let's zoom back a little bit. As Americans, in our sports culture, we've been living with the analytics revolution since, Bill James wrote the abstract in 1987. It was nerdy. It stayed underground, really started coming up. When's Rob Nair at ESPN? 96, 97, 98. So it's been bubbling up for us in our sports and fantasy and all these things. And it's just, not that it just has been hitting. Wenger was given credit for like the professionalization the Italians were a long time ago in terms of like fitness, but it's really picking up even more with American owners who own other sports teams that are gamblers owning teams, guys that are analytically inclined are owning football teams. And it's not that the teams aren't analytic based, but this is like the set pieces is the first place that you can control it, right? You have a stoppage, you have a moment. It's like an at bat, right? It has a very clear thing where you can go, okay, when we're on the left and we're between 15 and 20 yards, these are the 5 plays we run, right? Like, so
Mhm.
it's football doesn't normally have that, where it's much more flow, it's much more whatever. But this is a moment where you have, like in the NBA, out of timeout plays or set plays. They're literally called set pieces, and I hate to
It's
give
situational. It's a
right. I
third
hate to
down.
give
It's a
yeah,
3rd and
yeah,
8 or a 3rd and
yeah,
15, right? Like,
right.
it's the difference, right?
And
So
it's much more. They have I've listened to these guys, some of these analytics shows. It is much more American sports style focus, where the coach goes into the dirt and draws up a play, but
right.
they've worked on it already. But teams didn't even have coaches that thought of this.
That's the thing I was reading that article in The Athletic. It's really great. And it kind of talks about how
Tom
teams are
Warble,
starting to,
he's very
yeah,
good.
yes, how teams are starting to leverage this. He shouts out United and your beloved Brighton as teams who hired set piece coaches.
Tony
Uh,
Bloom is a gambler. He's
right.
a chairman at Brighton.
And so I'm just flabbergasted by, like I mentioned a minute ago, there are 2 facets of this. These 2 teams are being applauded for kind of being forward thinking and being one of the ones that on the front foot of this. But the 18th, like, there's not a set piece coach at every club.
Well, there
Are you
is at
kidding me?
Liverpool, we know. There is
Right.
at Brentford, we know, because
Yep.
Michelin was the one who started it,
Exactly.
and the guy
Yes.
from Michelin went to Liverpool. So it's
Mhm.
been like maybe 5
It's
years.
but it's
And
budding.
and the
It's not
and the
here. It's
funny
not
thing is and
expected.
I think there are people that knew that, but it was set pieces were viewed as, if you are a crap team, this is how you can score. David
Yes.
Moyes famously, and Rio Ferdinand murdered him for it. He was like, we're at United, and David Moyes is talking about we need to get at least 15 out of bounds, 15 corners per game, because that's how we're going to score. I'm like, we're at fucking Manchester United, and he's talking about corners.
Yeah.
Corners.
Well,
But to Moyes being on a budget at Everton,
yep.
yes, corners.
Well, and you go rewind it back. You put money on Arsenal plus 350. They should be a team that goes, hey, we're not on the level of Chelsea or on City right now. This is how we can bite back, though. Right? How many times do you see?
This is where the weird stuff goes on, right? This is where the light and dark, the Mourinho versus Pep, the play beautiful football versus pragmatism comes in, where you have, well, that's not our philosophy. That's not what we do. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, Arsenal can't become 1-0 to the Arsenal anymore. They can't go back to Graham Taylor. They can't go back to Tony Adams and Lee Dixon talking about Graham Taylor tied ropes around us as a 4 and made us practice that way to
Mhm.
make sure we move together.
Yep.
Like, but that was the kind, and they would do it again and again and again and again, to the point that they all hated Graham Taylor, but the heart of that defense became Wenger's defense. And once all those guys left, Tottenham stopped being able to defend. I mean,
Arsenal. Yeah.
Right? So that DNA of 1-0 to the Arsenal lived in the first half of Wenger, and that's what they've lost.
Mm-hmm.
And now they don't even have that, right? So, right. And they set pieces thing. It would take Arteta to go, I'm not a Barcelona player. I did not coach at Manchester City.
So then
I'm
it's just
going
hubris.
to do it this way.
It's just hubris then, because
yes,
all you've got is effectively saying, this is not how we want to win, so we're not going to even try.
Yes.
And in spite of that, what you've got is subpar efforts, right? What I'm saying is, look at Liverpool from last year is another good example, where they've got a completely makeshift back line and injuries left and right. You don't have your identity. You're not who you say you are. So why the fuck wouldn't you try and steal a goal off of a set piece with a goalkeeper in the 97th minute or some shit like that, right?
Because you're thinking like an American sports fan, where winning is everything, and football is not like that.
I know, but when you're talking about, but the ironic thing about that then is, we're sitting here after match week 2 and people are screaming about Arteta out and all that stuff because of 2 losses. So at the end of the day, it actually does come back to the results.
Yeah.
The overreaction.
But that's
right?
the weird thing, is like they want it both ways. At
Yes,
Arsenal,
exactly.
results matter, but also style matters, right?
Yeah.
And I think it would have been okay to lose these games had you played with force and energy and tactical nous, and a mistake, someone fell down. But in this case, Arteta against Chelsea, he literally did not adjust. Like, it was like, there is a lineman on the end and he's blowing up your fucking tight end
tackle,
every
yeah.
single play, will you bring a fucking fullback in here to block him because we're dying? We're getting sacked by Lukaku, who is the
and Reece
Reggie
James
White
is
in
just
this
coming
analogy.
off the end.
Yeah,
Reece
it's
James
just like
is
they're doing a corner blitz, and you're just not picking him up because you're like, well, that's not what we're doing.
Yeah.
Are you fucking crazy? You're gonna die.
Yeah, right. Quarterbacks. Good news. Third string quarterback does not have a broken neck. You know,
Right? Exactly. I mean, that's actually the really, really good analogy. It's like there was a safety blitz coming on every down, and Arsenal just did not pick it up.
They weren't even hiding it.
Right, and just decided, no, we're fine. We're gonna run that guy in a post pattern every play.
Yeah. So Sunday was a great game. A great few matches, So we had the matinee, the double showing of Southampton United, which was a lot better than anticipated. I think what I can guess what you would say about this game, having come off the big Leeds win, is that these are the games that United just takes a shit in for no good reason, and whether they don't get up for the game or whatever. They're just mentally softer than some of the bigger teams around them, and this is why they can't compete with a City or with a Chelsea this year. Is that accurate?
Coach. I don't know how many times I have to say that Ole's not a good coach. He's a fucking clown. They can get up for Leeds, which is in Ole's mind, because he played in the 2000s, is a big game for United.
Well, but also Leeds is going to give you the
energy, but they're an emotion team. They play, I don't know what a good example of this. They play like the Seahawks in that they play for emotion. You know they're going to get penalties, and you know they're going to be emotional and fuck things up. In a game that doesn't matter to them, we're going to the South Coast and sleepy Southampton. Hasenhüttl is a good coach. He's found more players. We were worried about them, but I have two guys to call out. And they sat in. Now, granted, from an XG perspective, United had 1.5 to 0.8. Yeah, Southampton got their goal pretty early on a deflection from Fred, who was half-hearted in his. That was horrible. Deflection.
I mean, Adams tried to miss, right? Because
and there was a little bit, and you wanted to touch on this sort of new refereeing where they let you give you a little shove and a steal, right?
Absolutely.
And for someone like Bruno Fernandes, who comes from the Iberian Peninsula, where they don't do that, right? In Spain, if you hit somebody, they go down. And he's played in Portugal, and he's great at drawing penalties. He gets a leg put around him, but gets the ball. Yep. He falls on the ground, throws his hands up, boom, into Adams, 1-2-3, goal, and Southampton have the early lead. But Southampton really good.
Can we explore that a little bit more? Because
for sure.
We talked about it, in the first week of the season with the Spurs City game being front and center. Tanganga beating the shit out of Grealish and Sterling
together at the same time.
Like knocking their heads together. It was fantastic. You had Højbjerg
really taking Mari down.
Lukaku earlier. We talked about that earlier in the show.
Kicking the shit out of Arsenal, really.
And this week you had two examples of it. Burnley, of course, kicking and smacking around Liverpool. And
trying to. They got beat badly.
On the field they did, but that's the Burnley. That's the Sean Dyche identity, right? That's always been there. And you've got this play, which was far more prescient because it 3 touches later, as you mentioned, it was in the back of United's net. And so Ole went off about this, and I know Klopp was whining about it as well. I do not sympathize with you at all. Okay, we talk about how the Premier League is, and it's true for City last week too. It's the toughest league in the world because not just the quality 1 through 20, but it's these games. You go to Southampton and you're in for a dogfight, right? So I am really, really in favor of 2 referee changes. The stylistic way that things are starting to kind of let the boys play a little bit is how I would characterize it.
I like it.
But also, and we saw it on Lukaku's goal, the offside rule has changed, and this is a goal that would have been chalked off last year. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's effectively like the blue line in hockey, where if you drag your back foot, you're onside. Right.
Yeah, so, they increased it to so that they don't get the armpit. It's basically there's a grace space.
Well, the grace space, from what I understand, is if some of your body is onside, you're onside, right?
I don't think it's exactly that. They still draw the line, but it's simply a wider line. And
right. Okay. And you know what? Yeah. Right. And so it's similar to like the college football playoff argument where it's like there's always going to be an argument somewhere. But if you're not talking about who's number 2, who's number 5, who's number 8, who's number 12, whatever it is, then like you have less of a gripe with it, right? Like if he's offside and it comes down to the red line, the dotted line and all that stuff, and his whole body's offside, and you're like, yeah, but you can't really tell either way. He was offside, and we're just determining how much offside he was. So at the end of that, you can't really complain about it. It's going to get more goals. I think the linesmen are doing a good job of governing that so far, which, by the way, is comfortably the hardest job in professional sports, being an offside lineman. Holy shit.
The fact that they get it right is incredible.
It blows my mind.
I think they
so,
do it by
yeah,
sight
I think that,
sound.
you know, I'm the first, second, and third person always to want to kill a referee and all that stuff. But I think that across the board, and again, we're only 2 weeks in, I haven't seen anything egregious, but the way that they're employing these new measures and adjustments of the rule.
What'll happen is guys won't go down. They'll just try
exactly.
and play.
You're disincentivizing diving, which is the worst part of the sport, comfortably. And it's the gamesmanship. And so let's go back to United now. What happens if over the course of 38 games, Bruno Fernandes gets 5 less penalties a game?
They win, they draw 5 less games. That's 5 points.
It could be 15 points. It could be 5 less wins, right?
Another point, by the way, this was really good, and I shared it on our Facebook page. Shout out Squeaky Bum Time on the Facebook page.
Yeah,
Gary Neville, they did their equivalent of Monday Night Football. He discussed the 27 games with fans versus without fans, and all of United's comebacks came with no fans. And his argument was, yeah, you can come back when there's nobody yelling and screaming to lift up the team that you're going against, and they just lie down, and your talent lets you come through. And hey, all of a sudden United looked like this super duper comeback team, but there were no fans. In this game, he pointed out specifically, he was like, this is the kind of game that United would have won last year because they would have just played on. But the St. Mary's crowd lifted them up to try and get their goal, and they almost did. They hit the post. Armstrong missed it, basically.
And Micah Richards said almost verbatim exactly the same thing about Tottenham Hotspur Stadium last week, right? Where if you play that game in a bubble with no fans, City's quality shines through. But Tanganga
and Dele Alli doesn't come through Fernandinho to win that ball, and the whole place fucking goes nuts. And you're like,
every time every time Tanganga would tackle somebody, every time Højbjerg would do something, 60,000 fans would cheer it like it was a goal, and they were like, "Holy shit, this is awesome! Let's keep going. Let's push on.
Do that." Yeah, exactly.
So I think that there's certainly it's not measurable, right? So it is a bit of a hot take, but yes, there is certainly
anecdotally
something to be said about it.
It may not ever show up in the stats. We don't know. We do know that last season was the best away records of teams in the history of the Premier League.
Yeah,
that's not going to happen again.
That's not a coincidence.
So United setting the record of away, they have now set the record or tied the record for unbeaten in away games, 27 in a row. Good for them. But that's just not going to happen. And they're not good enough. They're not coached well enough to overcome problems. That's my take. They'll be up for big games. They might beat United. They might beat City. They might beat Spurs. They're not going to beat Southampton away. They're going to lose Newcastle away. They're going to lose Brentford away. They're going to get killed Brentford away. They'll lose that game because they'll be like, Brentford, who cares? Right? But I do want to call out one player.
They'll get killed in Brentford away. Hit
2 players to call out for Southampton that are really big replacements. Mohamed Salisu, who came to them last season but was injured and never played. He's in the Vestergaard spot. He was man of the match. He defended like he led the team in tackles, crunching everything, heading away everything, deflections. And then this kid, Valentino Livramento, on the wing, a 20-year-old, just running everywhere, making good crosses. Part of the Chelsea loan machine. They have so many good players. They're literally funding all the good players. He's basically a Tyreek Lamptey type, which means I have to fall in love with him. But he's not 4'3". But we'll keep an eye on him. And, we're going to give I go back to it. I was worried Vestergaard left. I didn't know what was going on with Southampton. And now you see 2 players after one big game, and you're like, Hasenhüttl, you fucking German bastard. He's pumping. He looks great. He's big. God, his Cro-Magnon brow is Cro-Magnoning. I just love, I feel safe for them now. It's a weird league right now where you're just like, I love all these teams. The only team I want to see disappear is I think Norwich is fucked. I don't want to see
Norwich disappear. I don't know. we can get into them a little bit later in the show, but I don't want to see them go down. I would never ever root against a team that comes up and goes, "Fuck it, we're gonna go for it." Similar to they're like a shit Leeds, right? They're just not psychotic Leeds. They're friendly
but they played
Leeds.
really. We'll cover them in a minute, but I do want you to get your Wolves, get your Molyneux Nuno knows takes in.
Well, let's talk about that in a minute.
Spurs won. Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a second. But before we do, I want to talk a little bit about, I was very grateful this weekend. I was spending a lot of time with some friends and some future family and all that stuff, and at a really fun wedding. So I was feeling very grateful. And it reminded me of just the kind of family atmosphere that our friend Joe at Attitude of Gratitude Consulting kind of harvests and harbors with his clients. We talk about him on the show all the time, how he really does a good job of making sure that, you're avoiding financial pitfalls and being a little bit smarter about things. But the way that he goes about this is warm, it's welcoming, it's disarming, right? So a lot of times you could really be, have quite a squeaky bum when you're talking about finances, right? But you can feel confident in talking with Joe. He's a family man, and he just makes sure that he has that shine through in everything that he does and talks about. So give him a call, get a consultation, and talk a little bit more about what your situation's going through. And he's a guy that can be really, really flexible and help you find ways to kind of accomplish your goals. So do yourself a favor. Go to www.attitudeofgratitudeconsulting.com. Mention Chop Sports, and he'll take great care of you. So I wanted to get him on full blast there. Before we went into Wolves and Spurs, I was hanging out with, like I mentioned, a few friends. All the girls were in the wedding, so we just got to hang out and drink beers with the boys and watch the match. I made a new friend who I think I'm going to try and have on the show soon. His name is Eric Figo. He is Portuguese. He is handsome.
Oh.
He's been to, I think, 6 Champions League finals. He worked for MLS for a while. The dude is really impressive. He's really cool. And he's Portuguese, so he's a big Wolves guy. And he loves Nuno. And he loves everything about them. So I was telling him about the Nuno nose shirt. He's like, all right, it's pretty dope. Like, I kind of think it sucks that he's not, Wolves coach anymore, but guy knows his shit. And we were having
Wolves
a fun
is
time
basically
watching the game.
Portugal.
They are Portugal, right? Like they're basically they're not Ronaldo Portugal. That's it. Right. But yeah, it was, I didn't know what to expect. I thought that because Nuno wasn't there anymore, I thought that he was a lot of the sort of, I said this on the preview show, like a lot of the dog in the fight. And that wasn't necessarily the case. We did see Wolves come out really well and push Spurs pretty much to the brink. But the one thing I'll say is, I waxed poetically about Tanganga at the City game, and he tried as well as anybody could. He doesn't have a ton of pace. Sanchez helped him a lot, but Adama Traore will give any defender fits down the wing. The good news is that he stinks at finishing. He's awful, right? There was one shot where he took, and it went out for a throw-in, not a corner, a throw-in. So he obviously missed the huge breakaway chance around 70 minutes that would have tied the game. Big save by Hugo Lloris there, shouldn't be understated. But I felt like this was a game that Wolves deserved much more than 0 points there. But there's just no finishing there. And Jimenez looks tentative.
They took 25 shots, which is a lot.
But Jimenez,
he's still not there. Yeah. He missed.
And I thought that would
sitter,
be the case. I thought that would be the case.
And they took way more than they. What's that?
I thought that would be the case about Jimenez. I just wasn't scared of him anymore, and I'm not. And it's nothing against him. It is.
He may get there. It might be years.
Right, but because it is, he's physically 100%. They wouldn't put him out there if he wasn't healthy. But there is a mental aspect of it that has so many layers to it, where it's tentativeness, it's fear. And these things are they're reactive. They're involuntary, right?
Well, let's go back a second, right? He almost died in an accident.
That's all
where
I
he
need.
Smashed his head. Yeah.
So, and actually there was a challenge early in the game, I think with Tanganga, where I was like, oh my God, like I thought somebody like got hurt like that as well. But
there was a bigger moment in this game though, your friend and ours, my friend, hopefully, but still your friend. your friend Sir Harry of Kane did make an appearance. He looked a little fat, I will admit. I don't know. That was weird. I think he's been hanging out. He played. He had a chance. Spurs were good. I think this is a kind of win that helps a lot. Like it's like when we go, we could have lost this game. But they'll take the win, go home, and be like, okay. Now, one thing I do have a question on is not stylistically. Tactically, it's still Mourinho-ish.
It's very similar.
But what are you seeing? How there seems to be a happiness in how they do it. It seems that they're fighting for each other. They're pulling for each other. It doesn't seem so dour.
So one thing I'll say is sample size is pretty shallow still here. They got outplayed. It wasn't so much. In the Mourinho era, there were games obviously where they sat back. There was the majority of them. Some of them, though, the game was taken to them and they were simply reacting to it. That's how I felt this game was. Whereas City last week was more of we're sort of sitting back, we're sort of countering, but we're in your face and we're pressing.
Oh no, they were in City's face.
That's what I mean. But we're pressing when we can, and we're going forward when we can. Whereas that's the difference between Mourinho. It was like, oh, the ball's on the other side of the halfway line. Who gives a shit? Leave it there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We'll
get it later.
So stylistically, and tactically, that's the difference so far. But again, I think Wolves took the game to Spurs, and I think I think a lot of people were surprised by that. They did get the early goal, and they did throttle back a little bit. But I think that it was more Wolves imposing their will on Spurs than Spurs kind of sitting back. But and the difference again between the Mourinho and Nuno philosophies, as like you said, that togetherness shines through with the challenges and the tackles, and they defend in packs, right? Similar to
and to be fair, these first games at some of these more traditional home fields, like the Molyneux is from,
it's going to be supercharged.
Yep. Leeds, when we get to that at Ellen Road, your Palace games, your Brentford, these small old grounds where the fans, this is the town, this is it. This is not like we're going to be in the Super League. We have $1 billion stadium. These are like, this is a dump. This is our dump, right? This is
right.
What I think to put into context is England basically has 50 Wrigley Fields, right?
Wrigley Fenway sort of thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, more Fenway, more like vitriol, like bad Red Sox Fenway. Right?
Yeah.
Like what's happening right now. Right? Where it's nasty. They'll get on their own team, but especially get on your team. So it was a tough environment. I think Spurs should be happy to be like, you know what? We're good. We're out of here. We'll take the points. We'll walk away. And we're going to be like, we'll check that one off the schedule and be happy we got 3. It means we cannot feel bad about some draw later on down the road. I mean, frankly, that's how if I were a Spurs fan, I'd be like, we beat City and we beat Wolves, and we probably would have been okay with 1 point.
Out of those 2 games, if you told me we had 1 point, I would have been upset, but fine. And we've got 6, right? So I'm like, absolutely.
Now you've got Watford and Palace, which should be fine.
Those are winnable games. Those are games you're expected very much to win. And I forget who the next game is in between.
It's Chelsea,
that, but then,
Arsenal after.
I was going to say that's right. It's going to suck. At Chelsea and Arsenal, right? So when you put the entire schedule together, the next 6 to 8 weeks, you go, hey, get those points at Watford and Palace.
Put them in the bank. Be top of the league with 12 points for sure.
Yeah, and then you I believe you go to the Bridge and then you host Arsenal. Though that's another one right there where if you can get 3 points out of that, if you can get 4 points out of that, you're doing a backflip. If you get 3, you're happy. If you get 1, you're frustrated. But okay, fine, right? In that respect, that means one of those 2 teams didn't get 3 points from you. If you get 1, and that's kind of how you have to look at it.
Yeah, and then speaking of the rest of the schedule, we've got the big boys. Our boys are Burnley and Manchester City, both easily.
Oh, you mean
Liverpool? Liverpool versus Burnley. Yeah, no, Burnley, that was my bet at plus 1,500. That did 1,400. Did not pan out well. Liverpool took care of business. Very easy game. They got the 2 goals. Not really a problem. No resistance really put up from Burnley. 27 shots against. It was really an ass kicking by Liverpool. I just didn't have to check on who got the goals. I didn't even look. Oh, Jota and Mane. Jota early, Mane late in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Burnley didn't really put up a fight. Traditional stats, 67% possession, not
They
really
also
anything
had
to write
one.
home about. Just really only cared about this game because I was hoping Burnley would do something and they didn't. So Fortress Anfield is where it is. The other game, City just literally mopped the floor
Oh God.
with Norwich. I mean,
What was the minute they scored? Oh, it was
it
an
was
it was an own
12th
goal
minute own goal.
technically.
Yeah.
Both City and Liverpool. I mean, it didn't phase either eventually, but they both had a goal ruled out for VAR.
Yeah.
City for a
Didn't matter.
foul, Liverpool for offside. But
Yeah.
that was a moment where you went, is the door open? And then both teams resoundingly said, "Fucking no, it's not." Okay.
Yeah.
And
So
we said on the
the
preview show, City was
you know,
this could have been a not in the face game for Norwich, and it was coming off of the
but the
defeat,
thing that
right?
was annoying was like so this is one of the problems as a City fan. I know this is going to be like, wow, it was me, but like when City win like this, it's expected and it should always be like this. And you get the sense, oh, Norwich are just making up the numbers. But it might be just when City are good, they make it look so easy because they were popping the ball around. Norwich were trying to do things
right.
and trying to get on the ball, but City would just come in packs. It was one of those Bernardo Silva played and did that Bernardo Silva thing where you're just like, will you just get the fuck away from me? And he was just there.
Well, so let's talk about that a little bit. How did you feel about the lineup that Pep brought out? Because I remember seeing that and thinking that was kind of an interesting kind of collaboration of players, right? So he had Ferran Torres, Jesus, and Silva all in the lineup.
He's just always going to mix and match.
Yeah.
Jesus said he wants to be on the wing, and Pep was like, okay, you can play wing. Torres is better a little bit, doesn't mind making runs, I think is really the issue. And Jesus
Torres comes out
for
Foden, right? Foden comes in for Torres.
He will eventually.
Yeah.
But Laporte came back in, just a better pairing, just a better player than Ake, and moved the ball and scored a goal late as part of the grouping. When Walker's in, we've talked about Walker a million times. Jesus and Walker were popping it around. It was like this version of Walker where he's offensive and can pass.
Oh yeah,
was incredible. I mean, there was just not a player. There was simply no player had a bad game. The entire team was fantastic. The subs were fantastic. Norwich made City look amazing, and no one for the sad thing is no one for Norwich really stood out. Like Gilmore played, he had a few touches. They really just got the doors blown off them, and really never had a chance. It feels silly to say it's a training ground game, but when City are good, they make you look like you're not there.
Right. Oh yeah.
Right. At their best, they make it look easy to the point that it almost feels boring. But there's a lot of shit that's happened that's made it look like that. And that was one of those games where this is where City get all their points, all their goal difference, and when that season ends and they're like plus 80, and you're like, what the fuck?
Oh yeah, you beat Norwich on aggregate 9-1, right? Like that's where it comes.
So
from.
But this goes back to my other point. When City play inferior teams, they blow them away, right?
Yeah.
This is where they're going to win a league. They may go and be, a goal difference negative to minus, only be okay versus the top six because they tend to have some trouble and they'll lose their games there. But it's against teams like this that they annihilate. Like they'll go to Crystal Palace and beat them 6. Like they'll just kill these teams, right? And not play that well against Spurs, right? They may end up with only a point for Spurs and lose to United and have a draw against Arsenal. But when they play those teams in the bottom 10, they're going to get all the points, right? So they may get 60 points just from the bottom 10.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And frankly, that's what you're supposed to do. If you're a great team.
And that's where United's problems is. They'll only get 45 from that bottom 10.
Yes. But and it's true of every sport. Look at baseball, right? Like the pennant races are heating up. The Tampa Bay Rays are in first place ahead of the New York Yankees, who have been the hottest team in baseball for 6 weeks. Why? Because they beat the motherfucking shit out of the Baltimore Orioles. They beat them every game by about 9 runs. Not that the run differential matters. Who have lost 19 in a row.
They're on a historic suckitude.
Right, exactly. But the Rays have just bent them in half pretty much every day for the last 2 weeks, it feels like. So that's kind of where the Yankees are making up ground, but they can't get anywhere because the Rays are like, oh yeah, we're beating these morons.
So I want to call out a couple more games, or at least one. I mean, Brighton, Watford. I only talk about it because I love Brighton. They were really good as usual. Yeah. I'm nailed on. I found the bet. They're only plus 125 to finish top 10. I guess everyone thinks what I'm thinking.
Okay. Okay.
But the Leeds Everton game was really good. Ellen Road,
wild.
a lot of energy. Rafinha with a thunder cunt of a fucking strike to bring that game level. If they had played another 5 minutes, Leeds would have won that game. But Everton and Rafa have got to be happy. They're playing well. It's not dour. They're actually playing. So I like what's happening in those two teams. I think they'll kind of fight for mid-table with our friends from Aston Villa and Brighton. This little group, they literally was even. 17 shots apiece. Really good, fun game that they played. Ellen Road bumping. And then today's game, West Ham Leicester. We got to talk Moyesinho.
Moyes, yeah. So
dude,
I was traveling.
This team's good. This team is good.
I was traveling. I didn't see it. This was a game that I had. I went 1-2 on my bets this week, and frankly, I lost one that I should have won. I won that I should have lost. And then today was sort of the rubber match, and Leicester weren't up for it. West Ham were. And then as soon as Ayoze Perez goes down with the red card, which harsh but fair, right?
He got pushed, but then stomped the guy's ankle.
Yeah. So that Leicester bet didn't have a chance as soon as he did that. So, but no, West Ham deserved winners, right? Mikel Antonio.
Leicester, the thing that sucks is like Leicester is bad. Yeah. Mikel Antonio, the worst good footballer anyone has ever seen.
Yeah.
Comes up from lower leagues, takes a long time, has one big season at Norwich 5 years ago where he's 14-12. Then he's playing left back under the various managers at West Ham, and now is their all-time leading scorer in the Premier League with 50 goals. You think a venerated club that's been mostly in the Premier League, they probably spent 3 seasons out with great players who have come through. He supplants Paolo Di Canio. He is a Nazi. I do that signal because he literally did a Nazi salute at Lazio. He has literally said, "Oh yes, I am a fascist." I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I don't know what's going on in Italy. They still have fascists.
Oh yeah, they most certainly.
They lost. Okay, sorry.
Don't tell them that they switch sides.
We'll just drag Mussolini's head through the street one more time if that ever happens again. I think his daughter is the mayor of some town.
Let's let you take a victory lap on the unsung hero for West Ham in their first 2 games. Go ahead.
Is it my friend Said Benrahma?
It is Said Benrahma. He's been fantastic. So again,
I
was traveling. I was on a flight. I couldn't watch it, but I was tracking it as best I could. And he was everywhere.
Yeah, and you probably saw the goal and the assist. And the reason, and I'll tell you, this is very simple stuff. Like I've talked about with Ollie Watkins and the rest of the Brentford Mafia that are sprinkled throughout the league. Neil Mopay, who's at Brighton, and probably how I got into Brighton as well. He had a season where he was 17-14. He basically had a Bruno Fernandes season in the championship. And, like we learned in baseball 25 years ago, if you go 17-14 in a championship, you're probably 10-10 in the Premier League goals and assists. I mean, not everyone is Glenn Murray, who scores 31 goals at Crystal Palace and comes up, but not right away. But he did have 15 goal seasons in the Premier League. So what happens in the championship does not stay in the championship. If you find the right player to go in the right system with a good manager, it shows the talent. And you're seeing it with Ivan Toney. The guy scored 31 goals or 33 goals in the championship. And you're like, this guy's scoring 15 goals. It's just going to happen. Maybe it hasn't happened yet, but he's putting his ass around. He runs like he's like Paul Pogba if Paul Pogba had a motor. And you're just seeing that happen. And I called it. I mean, I just knew Benrahma. I looked at him last year. It didn't happen for him, but this year, we called him out, guys to watch, and he was one of them. With Bowen and Benrahma on the wings, with Kufal and Mikel Antonio,
there's that's a support
real there. And attacking force. And then you have Souček and Rice in the middle. They're good. They're good. West Ham are nailed on for top 10 for sure.
Yeah, I'm regretting that I had them. You had them at 10. I had them at 12. And I think the reason why we looked at last season, we talked about this during our preview episode.
Goals.
A lot of luck. And do I think that, and I also think that they're going to get taxed a little bit in Europe, which it remains to be seen. And I think that that's undisputable. It's just a matter of how much. Indisputable, undisputable, whatever. But 12 is, that's probably pretty low. If I were to get numbers on an over under right now, and they were 12, I'd go heavy on the over. So, or I guess the under technically, right? They'd be above 12. So yeah, when I look at who I have ahead of them, I have Aston Villa, I have Arsenal, I have Leeds and Everton. I can see them finishing ahead of all 4 of those teams easily.
If my Southampton hits, that's just that was just like I needed someone to fill in 12.
Yeah,
I just didn't believe in Everton. I knew that West Ham were better.
2 weeks in, we're already regretting our previews.
Oh, it's
and
fine
our
if I get Arsenal in the top 6, that would be a shock. That would mean that Arteta is a genius.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a lot of the games. We covered almost all the games. I don't think we missed one, and we've got my bets. I went over for all of them. I showed I put the money in, it happened. None of them were close. I was happy to see Brighton and Watford. I would have liked to see Brighton win. Arsenal never even showed up, and Burnley were just annihilated, like I said. I'm going to go on another minute. I am over Dyche. I see these other teams that come up and have progressive attacks, and you look at the lineup for Burnley. It's the same fucking 11 guys for 5 years. It's like, okay, don't give me this. What are you doing with the money? Are you buying players at all? Is there an academy? Like, people need to start asking questions. Like, okay, Sean Dyche, you want to win with your 11 guys. Where's the replacements? Like, why didn't you sell Tarkowski? You could have bought Vestergaard 5 years ago. He would have done a facsimile. Is it just like, I'm staying with my guys, and when I see them slip, I'm jumping, and I'm going to become the new Allardyce after and just go from team to team that does this style of play? I just don't buy the cry foul. Like, there's ways to do this. Like, he's living on sort of like, what would be the like defensive, like a Dave Wanstead kind of, I don't know. I'm trying to find a good NFL analogy of like a hardcore defense guy who keeps getting jobs but actually sucked and just like kept teams at 8-8. Is there like Eric Mangini kind of like, who the fuck, get out of here, Patricia.
Old Parcells.
Okay? Yeah. Well, Parcells was actually good, but
old Parcells. Yeah.
Old Parcells was not good. I don't know. I don't even want to give him that much credit. This is like a guy who makes the playoffs and loses the first game every year. Right. It's more like, oh, it's Rex Ryan. He's Rex Ryan. Sean Dyche is Rex Ryan.
With the foot fetish. He definitely has
with the foot fetish. Yes. And he talks about his hot wife. He does have a hot wife, I think.
I'm sure he does. But no, that's a good
So I'm kind of over it. I'm like, you know what? Stop with the bullshit. We both got them
going down, so hopefully, that wins out. But
maybe. No, I think if they lose Tarkowski or Ben Mee for any, although those guys might both be on steroids.
But you put money on Burnley plus 1,400, and I went, oh, thanks for taking this segment seriously, Laurent. Like, but
why was that so bad? They had won and drawn in the last 2 games at Anfield
because there were no fans there. Right? Like, we talked about that, but no, I never thought that they really had a shot. And I would have gone, just because I hate Liverpool, I would have gone with like minus
a draw.
Liverpool plus 2. I'm sorry, Burnley plus 2. Then that changes things, right? Like okay, that actually, I mean, that would have been a
well, these are my first bets ever. I spent my first $30 on Bet USA.
Right. Well, we're gonna get better. We're gonna keep the record going. You're 0-3 right now.
I'm crap. I'm gonna start going money line on weird things about weird players.
But that's the thing. You start to get more ingrained in it. You find different things, right? So
I'm just gonna find parlays.
Brentford didn't hit, but I thought it should have. And I actually parlayed Ivan Toney shots, 2 shots, not shots on goal, just shots.
He got 5.
He got 5. But it was the shots with a Brentford win. So I didn't get the parlay. I did get Spurs. So you
didn't lose money. You're in.
I'm even. And I didn't bet on Leicester because I was traveling today. So I got lucky. I dodged that bullet. So I'm even for the weekend.
Well, we will do more. We will definitely do more on Thursday and pick this part of the show up.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get out of here.
Okay, that was the Squeaky Bum Time Podcast with Mike Salerno and Laurent Cortines. We are the football wing of the Chop Sports Network, where we chop it up. See that? We record on Tuesdays and Fridays, so be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. And if you're listening on Apple, please rate and review the show. It makes a huge difference, and we need you more than the French needed a Maginot line.